What's up, Infected, and welcome to the Quarantine. Today I'm going to be taking a look at a Kickstarter game by the name of Dungeons of Infinity. Now, if you like what you see here in this video, I will have a link up in the corner that'll take you directly to their Kickstarter page when it's available, and it'll provide way more information than I could possibly cover in a video. The other thing I have to state before I continue is the designer is actually going to be giving away 3 prototype copies of the game, so if you're interested in that, I will have down in the description the information pertaining to that and how you would go about getting those. So what is Dungeons of Infinity? Well, Dungeons of Infinity at first glance is going to look like it's an RPG in a box, but it's actually the opposite. It's more of a strategy game with an RPG skin. There's very little actual RPG to this game. But that's really the best way I can describe it. So before we go on, of course, I'm going to have to state that everything you see in this video is a prototype copy of the game and is subject to change during the Kickstarter. But let's just go straight over to the overview, shall we? In Dungeons of Infinity, between 1 to 4 players will select their hero of choice and they will delve into the dungeon for whatever type of quest they would like to embark on, whether it's trying to find a special orb, whether it is trying to kill a specific boss, trying to clear dungeons, or just adventuring into one of the mini campaigns that will be available for the game. To do this, the players will be spending their allotted action points every round and explore the dungeon, which will be somewhat random based on the starting tile. So for example, if this player were to move, they would take the top tile, align the blue arrow from in the room that they're in, and then they would consult the number versus the number they show here to show that there's a body in the room. They can also explore or search the body, open any treasure chests that may be in there, or deal with the fog. Amongst these events, the players will also have to encounter enemies such as a grizzly bear that may be roaming the dungeon, or maybe a giant spider, maybe just a skeleton archer, or maybe a werewolf. These creatures would be protecting glorious treasure such as maybe an ice sword, or majestic sandals, or power shield, or the boss's axe. But somewhere, at some point throughout the dungeon's boss may make themselves known, and rather than become hunted, they will proceed to hunt the players. But the heroes aren't stupid. Before heading into the dungeon, they will have access to the shop that will be set up directly outside of the dungeon, allowing them to purchase gear before they go into the dungeon. And the heroes aren't novice heroes either. They are well equipped with a set of power cards at their disposal that have very unique and special abilities that are varied between all the different heroes. Throughout their journey, the players may trigger a trap that maybe causes one of the doorways to cave in. Now they have to find a new way out. Or maybe the floor falls through, forcing the player to have to make a check to get out of the room, and they can no longer go in there. Or maybe there's an active volcano under the dungeon and lava seeps up through the floor. If the players can persevere and press through the hordes of enemies throughout the dungeon and explore, maybe pick up special gear, they'll surely be able to gain enough experience to level up and fight the larger creatures, such as the boss that's hunting them. But the first question the players need to ask themselves before adventuring into the dungeon is, do they plan on going in there and cooperating with each other and working together to accomplish their goal? Or do they plan on competing with each other and going in there intending to backstab each other? Well, Dungeons of Infinity. Well, before I get started, I should probably mention when I first heard about Dungeons of Infinity, I was super hyped. I thought it was going to be an RPG in a box, and when I got it, I was horribly disappointed because it's not that. It is very much a strategy game with an RPG skin slapped on it, and that's pretty much what the game is. And I was a little disappointed. So first time we played, I didn't like it at all because it was not what I was under the impression the game was. So I talked with the designer and we kind of went over how the game was played, and I clarified some rules, and then I gave it another shot, now knowing what the game was, and it was very enjoyable. With that said, it does have its share of problems, but overall the game was very enjoyable. There's nothing inherently wrong with the game. Exploring the dungeon, having to go from tile to tile every time you play through the dungeon, you're just going to pull out a different starting tile that's going to tell you what each number represents. So each time you go through the dungeon, the tiles are all going to be different. This tile is going to be different every time you play, and so on and so forth. So it's got a lot of risk reward to it, and that's really cool. With that said though, it is also very luck based. It is very, very, very luck based. You're rolling dice, you're drawing cards. There's not a lot you can do to mitigate a lot of that luck. So it's definitely going to turn a lot of people off because of that. There is a small bit of mitigation, but it is very luck based. Now there's, of course, 3 different modes to play. There's the cooperative. All the missions can be done cooperatively and competitively. And then there's a mini campaign, and then the designer has stated that for the full game, he plans on having either a longer campaign or several smaller campaigns, stuff like that. So the reason for that is the designer wants the game to be able to appeal to a larger audience. So if you don't like cooperative games, you'd rather be competitive, you can play the game that way. It plays just fine. You don't like competitive games, you can play a cooperative game. But then it comes to my point where there is the story mode, which functionally it works, but there's no role-playing involved. There's not a lot of RPG elements to it. So it just feels like a really long scenario that drags on for 3 or 4 sessions, and that's pretty much it. We weren't a big fan of the campaign. I did, however, play with 2 people, I think it was, that enjoyed it. It basically is just the basic game, but it gives you a story reason on why you're doing this, which, you may be into that. It wasn't really our cup of tea, the majority of the groups, and wasn't mine. Definitely, we enjoyed playing the cooperative mode more. The competitive just kind of felt wonky. There's already enough threats going on the board. There's enough bad things happening. Adding in the competitive aspect just makes it insane at some points. So we just didn't enjoy that at all. They all functionally work, but just kind of throwing that out there, we didn't care much for the competitive or the campaign. Cooperative was the way we played it most of the time. It was a lot of fun. Now, it probably sounds like I'm bashing the game, and I kind of am a little bit. So the game has some very, very big flaws. Now, I'm not saying the game can't be a lot of fun. One of the most fun times that I had with this game was we had to find an orb, and fairly early into the game, we discovered the room with the orb in it, which was pretty cool. But then the boss that chases you around the dungeon spawned in the room. We happened to just draw really poorly. And my brother and I, we were super low level, so now we're in a state of panic because we have the one monster on the board that will chase you around. Now he's like 3 spaces from us. So we freak out and we're trying to figure out what are we gonna do? And it turned the game up to 11, and we were being chased throughout the dungeon, hoping that the boss would just get distracted by something else, and while we're still trying to carve through the enemies in the dungeon. And man, it was so much fun. It was so tense, and we loved it. But then for every one game we had of that, we had 3 to 5 games that were just kind of like, it wasn't really that fun. It was kind of boring. Even playing with this same group of people that had a blast the previous game, it was just kind of a slog, and you guys are just like, eh. So that's really my biggest issue with the game, is just the mixture between super high luck and it can sometimes dissolve into just a big slog. It's really hard for me to recommend this. With that said though, I still kind of want to, because every so often you will get a game of this that is just incredibly fun, that you're going to have a blast with, and this game is going to shine so much, and you'll love it. But like I said, for every one game that you get like that, you're going to have 2 or 3 games that are just kind of eh. So that's really my recommendation, is maybe. It has some very glaring issues which could possibly get fixed through the Kickstarter. So anyways, that is my review for Dungeons of Infinity. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time in the Quarantine.